everybody. I'm Tom Peterson, the Commissioner of Agriculture, and want to thank everybody for making it here today. It was actually my drive-in was really better than I thought it was going to be, so appreciate folks that have made the trek into the Capitol on a blustery day, and it's great to talk about really positive things that are happening in agriculture. And I just think, you know, when I look at Minnesota, we're really doing a lot of things, and we really lead the nation in our commitment to our natural resources, especially true with our farmers and our commitment to water. I think too, like you know, it's easy to be frustrated sometimes, but I've really been excited the last couple of years about progress we're making. And so this panel is a discussion in conjunction with the We Are Water Minnesota, which is a traveling exhibit and community engagement initiative that explores the science, history, story, culture, and relationships of water in Minnesota. The current partners are the Minnesota Humanities Center, the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency. We're glad to have Commissioner Kessler with us today, and the Minnesota Historical Society, the Minnesota Department of Agriculture, Health, Natural Resources, and the University of Minnesota Extension. Since 2018, our Minnesota Ag Water Quality Certification Program has partnered with We Are the Water. I want to keep saying that. That's like We Are the World. I was like, okay, that's all about it. We Are Water, to contribute stories about water quality certified producers to the exhibit, highlighting some of the great work happening in agriculture. Today's panel will highlight the work of our ag sector and the success of our Minnesota Ag Water Quality Certification. Before we introduce the panelists, we're going to have one of Danielle Isaacson, who works with the department and our Ag Water Quality Certification, to share a little bit about the program. So Danielle, I'll turn it over to you.
Well, thank you, Commissioner. Thank you all for joining us today. So I'm Danielle Isaacson. I'm the Program Operations Coordinator with the Minnesota Ag Water Quality Certification Program. And I'm just going to share a brief introduction to the certification program before we get started. So we are currently in the 7th year of statewide operation with the Minnesota Agricultural Water Quality Certification Program. And the success has really been it really stems from all the great partnerships, the robust partnerships that the program has been built on, partnerships with federal agencies, the Minnesota state agencies, private sector, and also the soil and water conservation districts. And the SWCDs are really the backbone for the water quality certification program. That's how we're able to provide that one-on-one customized local delivery on the farm. And there's been some really great program successes over the last few years. So to date, these are numbers as of today. We have 1,176 certified producers who are managing over 825,000 acres. These folks have implemented 2,361 new practices as part of their certification. So those are all new over the course of the program. And these practices are really doing a lot to protect our water. They've reduced over 40,000 tons of sediment per year, 120,000 tons of soil, 52,000 pounds of phosphorus per year are reduced, along with a reduction in nitrogen loss of up to 49%. We do also track the CO2 emissions reductions. So right now, certified producers are reducing 45,000 CO2 equivalent metric tons per year with those new practices they've implemented. And we have had the opportunity to award 179 program endorsements now for those folks who have really gone above and beyond to protect soil health, to improve their integrated pest management, to protect wildlife, and implement practices that are climate smart. Also, through a partnership that we have with AgCentric and the Farm Business Management Program, we've documented that certified producers earn an average of 20% or $40,000 more per year than non-certified producers, just showing that conservation really can pay off. So with that, again, thank you all for being here. Thank you for joining us to celebrate some of this great work that's happening in Minnesota agriculture. And I'll step out now so we can kind of move on to this panel of really impressive folks that we have here today. So thank you.
Well, thanks, Danielle. And yeah, it's really interesting to see the numbers. I always think about, you know, we used to think about there'd be like 15 or 5 to 15 in the program, and then it kind of jumped, but now it's really continues to grow quite a bit. So I want to introduce our panelists, and then we'll have them talk about their farms. And We have Representative Paul Anderson from the Starbuck area, and known Paul a long time, and serves here in the House of Representatives, and Brian Bigler, President of the Minnesota Corn Growers from Murray County.
Yep.
And what's the town here?
Lake Wilson.
Lake Wilson, that's right. And we were going to have Bright Kreitz with us, the president of Minnesota State Cattlemen, but weather has been challenging too. And then our final person, we were going to have Mike Scow, the president of the, who's a certified grower. And I stopped at his farm, and Mike never told me he was certified. I stopped at his farm this summer, and I saw his sign right on the corner of his building. Really cool. But Mike couldn't join us today, but we're pleased to have Darren Johnson, who is the soybean growers treasurer, join us. And Darren's from Faribault County.
Yep.
Yeah, and Wells,
Yep.
and I was going to say Faribault, but you're from Faribault County, which isn't in there. And so before we start, I just want to. Darren is a newly certified grower, and Darren, before we start, I just want to present you with your sign, and that we just happen to have today. So Darren just got certified, so we'll just take a quick picture here, and very excited for this. Yeah, I know. We don't want to get Paul in there. No, that's good. Yeah, thanks. Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Darren. Yeah, and thank you. So we're just gonna turn it over, and we'll start I'll start kind of how I introduced you. We'll start with Paul, and if you wouldn't mind, just introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself, and kind of your tell us about your farm and kind of how you got certified and everything. So
Thanks, Commissioner. And I have to admire these guys on my side here. I had to just walk under the tunnel to get here this morning. And these guys came, maybe a treacherous trip, and safe travels on your way home.
Yeah.
As Tom mentioned, I'm Paul Anderson. I serve in the Minnesota House. This is my 7th term. I'm the lead on the Ag Committee. And my wife and I, and with some help from our son in the fall, he comes over and runs a combine. We run about a 700-acre farm in Pope County. That's about 25 miles southwest of Alexandria. And we used to raise cattle, but when the kids left home, that takes more work, as you know, and the cattle went too. So we are just crop farming right now. We raise corn, soybeans, and a little bit of wheat. Like to raise wheat, but the last few years, the price situation, it makes it difficult to see it in the cash flow, but wheat is a good crop, and established cover crops and such as well too. But we're minimum till. We chisel our corn ground and try not to work our soybean ground. But I found a couple of years ago when we did have some rain, we've been really dry this last year, but on some of this heavy ground, you kind of have to turn it some in the fall, or else it just gets to be a hard pan, and the rainwater just runs off it in the springtime. So try to do no tillage on beans, but sometimes on heavy ground, we have to. And on the wheat ground, we like to get a cover crop in there after the wheat crop comes off. And we grid sample, prescription spread fertilizer, things like that, which I think most farmers today are doing because the inputs are just too expensive. I mean, nobody wants to waste cost on inputs, and this program does a really good job in kind of tailoring how a farmer can fine-tune his operation to make it, as we said, more profitable and also better for the environment. So the program is excellent. What I like as a farmer and a legislator is it's a voluntary program. I think as we found out back in 2015 with the buffer program, there was some hesitancy about making farmers do something without compensation, which is another whole story, but we'll let that one lie for another day. But again, glad to be here with my fellow farmers and really endorse the program.
Thanks, Representative. Mr. President Brian? And,
Yeah.
Did you drive in today too? This
I
morning
came
or
out
last
last
night? Good call.
night. Last night. I had more other stuff for me this morning to do. So, Brian Bigler, Southwest Minnesota. Currently president of the Minnesota Corn Growers, like you mentioned. Been on the board there for about 5 years now. Farmed down there with my wife, and we had 3 young children. Started back in '92, I think, when I finally started farming. About 10 years ago, got converted over, started seeing a lot of erosion and stuff, and I just decided I had to make some changes with things. And so at that time, I started converting over to strip till, and so we strip till for all our corn acres. and my intentions are every spring is to no-till all my beans in, unless I have to go out and fix some wheel tracks up or something, wet fall. Variable rate and all our fertilizers, work with my crop consultants, so we variable rate in fertilizer and seeding and everything. Doing all the cover crops, usually like to seed my cover crops into the standing corn in last half of August into September, and have been doing some earlier stuff too yet, and also been trying to work some into my soybean ground too. Got started into this program probably about a year or two after I think it got started. Paul mentioned just like it was a voluntary program to get into, and it just kind of gave me a base to see where I sat and see if I was trying to doing things halfway right, and been happy to be in the program so far.
Awesome, thanks. And Darren?
Yeah, well, I wasn't quite as smart as Brian. I just got up here about a half hour ago.
And he's still shaking.
Yeah, it was pretty treacherous conditions, but I am a stubborn bull-headed farmer, so I kept driving north, and I made it here. So thank you.
Thanks for making the trip.
Thank you for having me today. Yeah, so our farm, we basically started strip tilling 5 years ago, and we started off just on a pretty much a trial basis, and just to see how it would work. And I guess the reason that we started is we were just kind of trying to streamline things with equipment, and it just made sense. Well, after the first couple of years of watching what it actually did with our soil health and also streamlining our equipment, you know, because I mean, we still need to make sure that we're keeping profitability in this whole thing. And a few of my neighbors had become water quality certified. And we had a company that had approached us and said, hey, let's take a look at, let's see how you guys score. Well, it turns out, I mean, we were doing a lot of the best management practices already, and looking at it, there probably is a lot of farmers that really are probably already doing a lot of the best management practices. And that's the good thing about the water quality certification program, is it isn't a one-size-fits-all program, you know, so you do have some different options in it as well. So for us, it was a good fit. We scored really high. I'm a fourth generation farmer, and I want to make sure that we're keeping all of our ground, we're keeping all of our nutrients where they belong, and I want to make sure that it's as good a shape or better shape for the fifth and sixth generation farmers for us.
No, that's good. That's a great point. And well, kind of mentioned my next question was like, how did you choose to become certified or go through the process? But maybe you could expand on that a little bit. But maybe also like, how does it work, like nuts and bolts? Like, how did you? So he's like, okay, I'm gonna do this. Did you work with like your local soil and water district, or did you go online, or how did you take that first step, or who kind of helped you a little bit through the process if somebody did? But maybe start with that.
Yeah, I had our local water there girls. We got together and just took in all my plans to what I'm doing, and we just kind of went through all the fields and different practices that I was applying on them, and I guess I thought it was a pretty smooth process for me anyway, and went well.
You're like Murray County.
Yeah, Murray
Yeah,
County.
yeah.
Yeah, I think she covers
Yeah, it covers like
covered
different.
a good area down
yeah,
there.
She does a great job.
Good work with.
Yeah. How about you, Paul? The representative?
Yeah, pretty much the same thing. Well, I'm in Polk County in the SWCD office there, got me interested, and they worked with, at the time, Stearns County, and Grant from Stearns County. I think he was dedicated to certifying farmers for the program. And came out and go through the checklist and to see what you have to do to make changes. I put in some blind inlets for tile intakes, that type of thing, and worked on the tillage. But yeah, really a pretty painless process, I think, and one that makes it fairly easy to certify for if you're doing the right things.
Yeah, no, that's and
Well, for us, we took just a little bit different path. So we worked through our co-op, which, so Land O'Lakes would have been tied into it, so it was Truterra, so they have Truterra engine, and they use that to basically show the score of your farm. And we knew going through everything because, and you guys will probably agree with me, I mean, how we farm now, we used to look at a whole farm, 80 or 160 acres is, you know, one piece. Now we look at it, we're cutting that down into grids, whether it's 2.2 acres or 4.4 acres. So we're looking at things differently, and we've all been doing that. So moving forward, we thought this was going to be a good fit for us. And like I said, we did score fairly well with the practices that we had, and it was relatively easy going through Terra in our co-op, our local co-op CFS and Land Lakes. So a little different approach, but yeah, really simple to get it done.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting. That's kind of different ways to get into it. And I think that's kind of interesting because I think just the nuts and bolts of it, like how it actually works, or if you have good certifiers or people in your areas, that helps. That's good. Yeah. Maybe two of our two farm leaders. We'll start with Darren next. How about you both are in leadership in larger organizations, but maybe talk about your organizations like conservation priorities and how you balance that, or talk about that within the different organizations or soybean growers.
Yep.
Start with Darren.
So I mean, for us, conservation and stewardship along with it is obviously very important. But one aspect of it that we need to make sure that we are always looking at is that we're also maintaining profitability along with it. So that's where we're trying to kind of make sure we keep it in the middle of the road, and that profitability stays along with it, but stewardship and conservation also comes along with it, and we're keeping our nutrients where they belong, but we're still giving farmers the options to make the decision that they want to make on their farm as well.
Yeah, echo a lot what Darren said there. Between the profitability, and it's definitely not a one-size-fits-all for everybody. I mean, for my region to either one of these guys' region, it's going to be different how it's all done. At corn growers, we've done a lot of investment. We have our innovation grant program where we have individual farmers applying for grants to do certain practices on their farm, being it cover crops or just nutrient management or tillage practices. That's been a good program for us, had a lot of response with it. I also do a lot of work with U of M, with different cover crop studies and different tillage studies and stuff. So been big with nitrogen management with Brad Carlson there and stuff. So been a lot of good programs going on in the field.
Yeah, I like the Ag Innovation Grants. Was checking them out at the Ag Expo, and I think that's something I try to look at every year because you're always looking at new ideas and try to find the positive things farmers are doing or thinking of, and I think that's a neat thing that corn growers do. So, so Representative Anderson, a little different. Like, how do you see the legislature and conservation? And this has been funded through clean water funds, and I think about we're pretty far into our legacy now, but I think we're looking at things we could do on the ground and practices and different things like that. But I'm just curious how you see conservation priorities like in the legislature and how it works out, because you've been involved in the Environment Committee, the Ag Committee, lots of different things, and you've been a county commissioner too as well. So you've had a lot of different hats. But how do you see it like in the legislature as programs like this work out and things?
Well, I think especially that it's voluntary is key to making it a success. But I will have to say early on, there was kind of some seed money from USDA to get the program going. And there was some concern about the cost of the program. But the neat thing, I think, is the program gets bigger and better on a per acre basis. That cost actually goes down. You have some fixed costs, but as more acres are enrolled into the program, it reduces that cost per acre. So again, we have to expand this now too to get to some of the lands that maybe aren't up to snuff in terms of what they do for the practices on the land. But the concept is excellent. The equipment money coming in from the feds is good to do practices, things like that. So from the economic standpoint, I think, the concern was there about the cost, but again, as it gets bigger, that cost goes down. So, and again, there's a lot of support for conservation, and as my friends were talking here, the sustainability, to me, I equate that with profitability. We have to make a profit to stay on the farm, and this helps us to lower expense costs and then keep the yields as good or better as previously. So it's really a win-win situation, I think.
I think too, Brian was with our trade delegation to the United Kingdom, and they're really looking at our more and more quality of our crop and how it's produced and everything. And I think that was a really interesting, so we can show like things like this, and we see companies and countries very interested in that program too as well. So it has a lot of benefits as we see. And then also farm business management has been able to start looking at the numbers and quantify the actually farmers are doing well that are in this program. And so that's, I think, pretty neat too to just kind of highlight. So I wanted to see if there's any other questions from anybody else. If anybody else had any questions about the program or anything otherwise, Brad or anybody else, did we cover most of it?
I could ask Darren.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Brad.
Commissioner, you'd like to have a
Well, I was going to say thank you all for your leadership in this area. And as we think about how to grow this, you all mentioned it needs to be bigger. And I think we are trying to do what we can with clean water fund. I'm wondering what ideas you have. I mean, I think we hear a lot about neighbors and hearing from trusted sources, whether that's co-ops or advisors, but always looking for ways to grow the program. So if you have ideas that we all could help implement, that'd be great.
Yeah.
I can go. So I guess probably the biggest thing that we had that helped us, which now in agriculture, is technology and data. So we were able to use our data, doing side-by-side comparisons, whether it was starting to strip till, no-till, different vertical till, all kinds of different practices. So not only were we able to look at it 1 year, you're able to look at it multiple years and extract some of that data. And that was just enough to show us that, okay, we're not losing anything by going to strip till. If anything, we're gaining and doing a better job at placing our nutrients, and plus it's in our control as well. We're actually applying our own nutrients. So for us, I would say in most cases, data is going to be the one thing that's going to probably tell people that it's going to work for them. And like we said up here, it isn't a one-size-fits-all. I mean, from township to township, it varies, and we all know that. So that's why the data helps provide us some of them answers, and I guess puts the trust behind the practices that we're using.
And I would add, I think maybe part of your question was to get the word out, to get more people to take part in the program. And I think, going to our retailers, for example, the ag retailers and crop consultants that work directly with the farmers to encourage them, tell them, it's not like going to the dentist or anything like that. It's rather painless. Could be painless. So, the MDA, puts out press releases. They're in the Farmer magazine, things like that too. But I think actually talking to the people you work with and you rely on for information would be another good way to get the word out to encourage more people to look into the program.
Yeah, I think about, we had our, the 500,000th acre celebration up in my county, in Pine County, and just because it was there, and it was the governor, we had invited quite a few neighbors and everything, and they didn't really know a lot about the program or much about it, but I think, I can count 3 farmers that were there that day who on their own went and did the certification. And they were really proud to tell me. One was a county commissioner, and that made a really big deal. He just did it on his own. He investigated it, called the guy. Another one was a younger organic farmer, and he stopped me in the feed mill one day, and he was so excited to tell me. He's organic, he's all organic, a couple hundred acres, and he was so excited to tell me the practices that he changed on his farm. It's just a little harder sometimes. You think organic, and organic farmers sometimes they have even more things to do. And then the third person was my neighbor, and I noticed he'd started experimenting with cover crops the last year or two. And I was just driving by his farm one day about 60 miles an hour, and I saw the sign at the end of his driveway, and I slammed on my brakes, and I was like, wow, that's really cool. So I think it's got good word of mouth, and that's a great question. Brad?
Well, I was going to ask a little bit, what Darren touched on a little bit with the work with the retailers and the work that you do. Because we were really excited to have this relationship that we do with Panelists Introductions and the regional co-ops, but through their precision ag software, right? They actually built this connection to our risk assessment software so that your data that is yours and is under their operation can just be translated into our scores, but we don't have to take any of your data, but then that's what they use to certify it with. I mean, that was your experience, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And the really neat thing about it too is, you know, that's just the beginning of it, you know, because they're looking into the future, you know, about sustainability scores and actually going into food labeling. You know, Campbell's is a big one that's on it. So they're digging into it further down the road. And this is just us, you know, trying to be proactive and looking at it. And I truly believe that, you know, we are all doing the right thing, what we think is the right thing. You know, everybody's different. But the Campbell's and the Truterra path, to me, looked like it was very interesting, and I think I think in the future, it's going to be here to stay. So.
Any other questions?
So one question is, have there been any changes that you've seen on your farm since implementing some of your conservation practices, your conservation work, or since becoming certified? Have you seen some of those benefits that we've talked about?
Well, I would just mention, you know, like covering up some open intakes and putting French intakes, or whatever you call them, over that has reduced erosion. You can see that. Where I live, we were really dry last year. The drought hurt us a lot. And you know, and I think a lot of farmers said my crops were better than I thought they would be. And that may be partly true to conserving moisture in the soil, that you didn't work up the ground too much and lose it to evaporation. So I think, you know, it's hard to quantify that, but I think conserving moisture as well as soil really helps to stabilize yields and such. So that's what I would say, is that even in adverse conditions, it was better than we thought it might be in the drought.
I would agree with that. I think that on an average year, or normal year, whatever you want to call that anymore, but I think it's going to be on par with everybody else's. But on the adverse years, I think is where it kind of shines. If it's dry, definitely should. Last year I had some really good crops, except for the wind hit it. But and then other years, we've had some really wet falls, and there's a lot of neighbors. They only able to get in the fields, and they're always coming up like, well, how many times you get stuck to them? Have you left the track yet? You know, it's
So
just
2019 for your area was really something down there.
Yeah, we were wet, and I was just mowing right on through, not even leaving a track, and guys were dragging their combines all left and right. So, you know, you start getting advantages like that, you don't think of right off the top, but they will show up.
I mean, I think I think a lot of us have been doing a lot of this on our farms for a long time. And I think some of this stuff has just started highlighting what we've been doing. And have we added to it, accentuated things? Absolutely, we have. You know, we were talking before we started this whole thing. I mean, we've got 30 miles of buffer that we've had in for 20 plus years. Kind of the case for most farmers. Did we have to add some here? Yeah, we did, which we were completely fine with. But once again, farmers don't necessarily like to be forced to go down that direction. But a lot of them already did have that type of buffer in place. So for us, you know, not a lot has changed. I mean, we've seen some soil health definitely, as this is our 6th year strip tilling, so we're just starting to get some years behind it. And I don't know how long Brian has been doing it, but it seems like in that 4th or 5th year of transitioning, you start seeing that, you know, from a drainage standpoint. Yeah, some of our farms that we would consider to be, would have been some of our wetter farms, are actually draining better now that we're strip tilling and doing a little bit less tillage on it. So, and it's taken us some time to kind of take the blinders down and actually be able to, you know, throw a little risk on the table and actually go down that path too. So.
Any other questions? All right. Well, we want to thank everybody for attending today, and thanks panelists for driving in, and just really appreciate highlighting this program. I think it's just really, for me as a commissioner, it's very exciting too to talk to other states about and have other Commissioners asked me about it, and the USDA too, and here the Secretary and NRCS, also an important partner with our soil and water districts too. And so just a reminder, as we've been, the governor and department, we set a goal to get to 1 million acres by the end of the year, and we're clipping right along on that. And so if people are interested, to contact your local SWCD, we always say is the best way to get through that. So our Water Minnesota is on display at the Minnesota State Capitol through February 27th, and it's on the rotunda floor, kind of back in the one side there. So if people want to take a look at it, it's been a kind of a neat thing that's been all around the state and here. So appreciate that. So thanks everybody for coming today.